Am I saying that right? The YouTubes.
Yep. It's a series of them.
Oh yeah, that's right. Everybody all out in the YouTubes. All right, we are looking good to go. So let's do the classic opening. You guys could probably say it by
Oh,
memory here.
well, I don't see anything on Twitch yet.
Hmm.
What? I literally just checked it.
Oh, I mean, it could just be me.
It is definitely.
F5.
You got like a tape delay or whatever.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll make it Dion edit it. Thanks for editing this, Dion.
Cut this one out.
Oh, it says this video is only available to subscribers? Oh, no. This was something done yesterday. Why?
It's twitch.tv
Yes.
/ Gold Squadron podcast.
/ Gold Squadron
That's all.
podcast. Yeah.
Let's see if I can see my handsome face.
Every time it's just old
Oh,
men,
hey, there I am.
Yep,
old men
I
learning
suckers.
technology. Is the
Hey.
other half of Gold Squadron podcast.
You know what? For that, I am hitting the resubscribe button. So
Nice.
there. Take
There it
that.
is. I don't have one of those. Or I'll do the Wookiee chant myself.
Ba, ba, ba,
Excellent.
ba.
16 months.
What?
So proud of myself.
Alright, I'll just double check. We are streaming on all the services because you can catch us on Twitch and YouTube, which is going to be an interesting thing.
Are you on Mixer yet?
I'm sorry, what?
Don't worry about it.
It is going to be weird when we're streaming so much, we literally have to split streaming for Australia and Nova.
Ooh.
That's how much streaming we're doing. Is one channel can't contain it all. All right. Looks like we got a couple viewers here, so must have got out. I have an alert, and that's good enough for me.
It's word on the street.
All right. We're gonna do a little clicky thing in a second here, and I'll get my lines up. Boom. All right.
Clicky thing.
Yeah, the like, dunk.
Oh,
To match-
gosh.
To
Don't.
match, to match your sound and video. That's what that thing's
Sync
for.
that audio.
Yeah, syncing audio.
Do we have to do that?
No,
You
don't,
have to.
no,
Okay,
don't.
yeah.
No, I'm being
Professional.
hilarious. Anyways,
Don't have to do snaps.
We used to have to do that. You remember those days?
I remember.
What a nightmare.
anyways, this is episode 122 of Gold Squadron Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, William Hegwood, and tonight I'm joined by Zach Bart
Hey, hi.
and Chris Chico Brown.
I am really excited to be on the second best piece of content on this channel, Go Paintcast.
Woo, woo. Big shout out to Luke doing some great jobs. Which, man, great transition because I need to give a quick thank you for everybody watching our streams lately. Currently in the world tour, that's why Dion's not here. He was streaming Gen Con, Buenos Aires, Sacramento, Poland. Now he's going to Australia while I go to Nova this weekend. So, just want a big shout out to everybody watching and supporting those streams. Everything's been going great, and hopefully we can round out the rest of the world tour without a hitch.
So when
But
are you guys going on vacation?
what? Well,
When are you
I
guys
mean,
just going on vacation?
when your job's what you love, working is a vacation. Or something wholesome like that. I don't know. Never. Work is life. For Dion, anyways. I'm on vacation every day. I live my life like that. Anyways. Moving on to tonight. We have some illustrious judges with us, which is why we are discussing the FFG Games floor rules. Now, FFG released this. I got it on the screen here for visual lookers. This was July 25th, 2019. And effectively, the floor rules covered many things here. You can read it. It's on their website. It literally applies to every game in the organized play, and it gives out steps to judges, mostly judges, but also it's critical information for players as well. They have things about where we're going to get into, which is penalties, ways you can receive penalties, illegal game states, things like that, unsportsmanlike conduct, and basically everything that judges need, which is something we never had in X-Wing for so long, so long. So let me get you guys' just initial opinions as renowned judges and part of the kind of network of nationals and international judges. What was your guys' personal opinions and kind of the judges' opinions of these floor rules? Did you know ahead of time? Were you able to get some any feedback into it? What were your thoughts?
So and you're not going to get anything about it ahead of time because everything of that is covered under NDA. So if we were part of it anyways, we wouldn't be able to tell you.
Fair enough.
But something to note about this document is that it covers all games. So one thing that I know, like myself and other judges I've talked to, that we don't particularly like is that there's still a host of questions about X-Wing specifically that we all have questions about and we want answers for, and this just doesn't cover them, or it touches on pieces of it but doesn't go into great depth with some of the stuff that X-Wing gets a little more heavy about. And they talk a lot about cards, which we don't have a lot of cards in our game. So yeah, like there's a lot missing, but I would rather have something than nothing. And I think it's for the most part really good.
Yeah.
Now it's going over to you, Zach. What's your thoughts?
I would echo that same sentiment. I would say that these are definitely like great first 2 or 3 steps towards something. It would be really nice to see some more game specific or even some examples of, hey, here are the floor rules incorporated into the X-Wing tournament document, especially with some of the things that people really latch onto with, like, what happens in this situation. There's nothing in there about accidentally seeing a dial for your opponent. There's no way they can put that across in a document like that. So it would be great to see kind of an addendum to it for each game that they have, a strong tournament scene.
Okay, and that makes sense. It's definitely one thing that is lacking with it because it is such a broad document, and many of their organized play games are so complex that you are looking for, individual examples of things.
Right, and to kind of add on to that, they have said that they're those are coming. So
Okay.
so fear not. Like, it's hopefully soon. I don't know.
Yeah, like there's some oddities in like tournament rules say you can't take notes, and for certain games like was it Netrunner or some of the other card games, that really mattered because like you could watch your friends' opponents in other games and go into a cut knowing what they had in their deck, whereas that's not nearly as much of a problem in a game like X-Wing.
Right, or you could sit there and if you weren't a very good card counter, you could sit there with somebody's deck list and check things off as they play them to effectively card count. So, like, yeah, taking notes in other games was a big issue, and that's why we suddenly had it. But for X-Wing, sitting there with a list of your points and your opponent's points and kind of circling things and doing some quick math, while you're waiting on your opponent to set dials, that's not a big deal. And like suddenly people make it a big deal because we get this rule that's applied for other things, and we try to apply it to everything. So people lose their mind whenever they see you with a piece of paper.
Sure, and
that's
there's a fine line between what do I want to say, recording public information and taking notes, and there's kind of a blurry situation there. So it would be best defined per game.
Right. And like we've seen way back in the day, before a lot of these rules existed, that people would come to the table with extra cards and pieces of paper that showed like openings. It's like, do this and this and this, or okay, I'm playing against these ships. Here's like my document about that ship, so I can study up really quick and know what he's trying to do. People would come with like an encyclopedia basically about X-Wing, and be able to download all the information they need each individual game. So there's a line somewhere. So some people like to say no pencil or paper anywhere near the table. I think that's crazy, because this is a game where score matters way too much, because every game goes to time. So some of that stuff to me almost feels necessary rather than not being allowed.
Well, speaking of things that aren't allowed, I say I say we move on. Well, let me ask you one last question. You guys have both interacted with these new floor rules. Has either one of you judged a tournament with them?
Yeah, I did the Muncie Hyperspace this past weekend, that Zach was actually playing there. I think it went really well. I only had like a couple moments that I had to pull something out from this. Like I had one guy got a couple penalty points, but that was it. And that's just because he was being really sloppy and knocking stuff all over the place. So I gave him a penalty point, and hoping to get him to think about what the heck he was doing, and not just knock ships clear off the mat with a flying elbow.
Sure.
But
so since using them, I assume that they what do I want to say? That you want clearly everybody who's judging games and being a TO or a marshal or anything like that to heavily reference these. I mean, they are official. It is an official document, right?
Yeah, and they're helpful. I mean, it's not something that I'm walking around with this ready to thump somebody with the floor rules.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really handy when you have a situation like, oh, this situation was mentioned. I don't have to sit here and figure out in my head, oh God, how do I deal with this crazy moment? Like, I've got it there, and I can do something. The counter of that is, this is a pretty hefty document, as we're going to look at, and there's some things in there that are a little confusing, little vague, that either judges who aren't familiar with it and don't dig into it too much are, in my opinion, using it incorrectly. And there's also players that latch on to some certain things, and if they find either a weak judge or a weak opponent, and they just want to pull one of these out and try to hammer on somebody, is like, hey, I got this thing, and I'm going to get an advantage because I found this extra little floor rule that I'm going to thump you with.
Honestly, I'm of the opinion that it's a good tool to have that you don't necessarily want to use.
Okay.
It's like, because I just finished playing D&D earlier tonight. It's like having the DM screen. It's, you have a point of reference to award someone or punish someone, but it shouldn't be this is what you do 100% of the time. Like, if it's just a misunderstanding and some people are at the top 8, top 4, top table or whatever, and somebody just gets a little frustrated, there's no reason to be penalizing someone. It's just, maybe there wasn't a misunderstanding. I think at Gen Con was like the first time that they ever used these things. Mm-hmm. And the very first thing the judge did before we ever did anything was saying, hey, if you guys just have open communication the whole time through your game, this isn't going to come into play whatsoever. So that's all you really need to do. And then if you're doing that, then you shouldn't be worried about these or worried about getting points just by going to an event.
Right, and these we keep talking about points and stuff, but we're gonna probably break that down in just a second here. But on your point, this really isn't for exactly four players to use, especially against another player. It's not something that you're actively trying. I liked your point that we don't need to use these. This is purely just a formal document that can resolve conflicts, but most players should be resolving their own conflicts. It's only when they have a disagreement, then they call in the judge, and the judge can make the ruling. If he's having troubles with the ruling, needs to reference these floor rules then and see.
Right. Well, so another thing to add on to that is that I've seen a lot of players who get into a situation where something feels fishy. They don't understand what's going on, and they'll kind of like just let something go because they don't know how to handle it. Knowing that the judge has this stuff available, I would hope that players are more confident going, something's weird here. I'm going to call a judge, let him handle it because I know he has the resources to be able to handle it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean that's the whole point of the judge, right?
Yep.
All right,
To adjudicate.
Exactly. So before we jump into these penalties that we keep referencing, I want to start and make it very clear that there is, for this document, two very different kinds of tournaments: casual and competitive. Okay? It says very clearly in this document, open play, store championships, anything of that realm is going to be a casual tier, and that these rules shouldn't be and aren't supposed to be heavily enforced in those casual tiers. So your game night, your league nights, things like that at the store should not have penalty points. That's not how this is what this is supposed to be doing. If it is like a store championships or so, they allow a larger breadth of these penalty points before we'll say what punishment is dealt out would be the best way to say that. So if you are a casual player, going to open play nights, things like that, monthly tournaments, this hopefully should not affect your experience whatsoever. On the flip side of that, on the competitive tier, this is where you're going to see these more regularly. Most judges are going to be very familiar with this and be focusing on giving out correct penalties for different things and to keep the games as on that competitive level as possible. You're going to see things like, we had the difference between malicious and what's the opposite of malicious?
I know it's not auspicious, but that's where my brain is going right now. Benign. Benign.
D-Yoon, save us.
Well, basically, it's the question of intent, right? Mm-hmm. On the competitive tier, we're going to question your intent a little bit more. In the casual, you're going to assume the best of people, if they're going to assume that they actually don't know how these triggers work, and this would be a great learning experience for them. That's the whole reason they're coming out and enjoying the community. At a competitive event, you should know how your things work, so it's just blanket going to be more strict. So,
right. If you're at a casual thing, it's like you should be having mercy on people. There's probably people there who aren't tournament players. They're learning. They're trying to get into the game, and I'm sure your store owner would be happy if you helped out those people, made them feel comfortable, taught them how things work. Is like if they break a rule, let them know, but then be merciful and work your way through it instead of just seal clubbing people. I mean that's not helping. Right. People are just going to walk out of the store and be like, you know what, that wasn't any fun, and they're never going to buy product again. And your store owner is going to get mad at you, and nobody wants mad store owners coming at them.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I would not expect these types of penalties and warnings and blah 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 in that kind of casual environment, but expect it in the competitive. So speaking of penalties, this document goes over 4 different kinds of penalties: warnings, game losses, match losses, and disqualification. Let's see. I don't. This whole document is available.
Well,
Once again.
which we only really care about 3,
Mhm.
is like
Really?
game loss doesn't really
It's
matter
the
to
same.
ours, because they're referring to game systems where for a tournament you would play like 2 games for a match. So
Okay.
that's where they're saying you might lose that game, but you still have a chance to keep going. Whereas X-Wing, it's like the game is the match.
Okay. That's good clarification there. All right. So let's see here. Basically, it covers. I think this is all. Yeah. So the first one is just the different kinds of warnings and penalties. You got normal warnings, hard warnings, and severe warnings. Let's see. Let's give an example here of the normal warnings for people who can't. For audio listeners, can't read this as we go along here. It says normal warnings, something like an error in their deck or an unintentional slow place. What are some other examples of something that would give just a regular penalty point?
And I gave one out for a guy who was just being sloppy and like really screwing up game state by like completely knocking over ships, and we have to take the time to figure out and put things back. They're basically like, for the most part, just slaps on the wrist saying, tighten your stuff up. And if you keep doing this, you're a problem and need to be dealt with. That's where you just give out like 1. But then there's like the bigger ones, like 2 penalty points for the hard warnings, 4 for the severe warnings. You got to be really screwing up stuff like that. I mean, like major screw ups that are and
Yeah, they give examples in
yeah.
the hard,
Go ahead.
They give examples in the hard warnings about heated arguments between players or a bad attitude towards a judge. If you ask for a judge call and you're like, "Wow, I didn't like that. I don't think you're a very good judge." Judges just be like, "Well, this document says you get 2 points, sir. Please do not continue doing that." And then, and you said the severe warnings, and this is basically like we would ask you to leave. If you continue, you have to get out of here. If you do one other thing, you've
Like if someone had to tell you that you're causing a scene.
Yeah. If you're disrupting not only your own game but the entire event, it gives examples of an aggressive behavior towards an opponent, which would be like threatening them or whatever. Or
Right,
spouting-
but I mean that's kind of like etiquette stuff, like major etiquette screw ups.
Sure.
Like
I mean,
flipping a table or something.
there's also like, there's also like super in-game things or like tournament level stuff that people are going to get some of these things for, but I mean that kind of comes down to the TO himself and how he's gonna apply these things. I mean, these minor little missed things are only going to get 1, but if you're like screwing up the integrity of the tournament by like completely adding up your points wrong and getting totals completely different, I mean that's going to be dealt with harsher than somebody who knocks over a ship.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I do want to say that. So it says right here on the bottom. If a player ever accumulates too many points, they reference 5 in competitive and 7 in a more casual event, then they are disqualified from the tournament. So that's why that 4-point severe warning is like, dude, if you do, watch yourself, dude, kind of thing. Well, do you guys have a thing? Do you even know of a situation that would warrant, like you said, game state, like a game state situation that would warrant just an automatic 4 points?
It would have to be like absolutely major. I mean, like that's to the point of like, you looked at somebody else's dial and, there's a real question about intent or that like borderline is like, I would almost give you a loss right now, but we are almost there. Like that is the border of penalty points and losses.
Yeah, I think that's about right. It would have to be something major that is affecting like multiple turns of a game. Like if you somehow manage to change your opponent's dial or something ridiculous.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, like I mean, like we had that situation, at Worlds a couple of years ago, Dialgate, where the guy, changed his thing, that like, that a lot of people would say, that's something that's you're either disqualified or the game loss right there. But that would be at least a 4 penalty point thing. Is like you did a major screw up, even if that you think that was an accident, that is massive. Take your 4 penalty points. Do not screw up again the rest of the tournament, or you're gone. Right. Another example is if you decide to completely walk away from the table, refuse to play, or even drop a game of Loop and Chewy in the middle, that would probably be 4 penalty points. Yeah.
Well,
gotta get my jab in there.
So gonna ride on that 4-point line for as long as possible, I guess.
Well, 4's dangerous number still too.
Not in the finals. But
well, you still get the FFG call out.
Anything above 3, it gets sent to FFG.
Right, and that's the point I wanted to make about these penalty points is that this is not for witch hunts. This is not to be like, oh, last game this dude did this thing, judge. You should give him a point for it. Players should never ever ask 4 penalty points to be given to their opponent. Would you guys agree?
This is not soccer. I totally agree. Or football. I totally agree.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
blanket statement on that.
I agree with that. I think bringing situations to a judge and saying this happened in my game, I want to let you know, but then it's still up to the judges. Like, oh, thanks for letting me know that. Like I'll keep an eye on them, or oh man, like I should do something about that. That person's going to get a penalty point, and that's still up to the judge. But right. If something happens in your game, mention it at that moment. Don't go to them after the game expecting them to throw penalty points out there. Like,
right, and I would assume in like now for like a small trial or something, 30, 40 players, you probably only have like one main judge. But when you get into the larger tournaments, Worlds, obviously, Opens, Nationals, things like that, you're gonna have a team of judges, so they're not gonna interact with every single judge call. So if they are giving a penalty point to somebody, I assume they have a way of at least tracking that, so that they can take it back and be like, dude, this is the 3rd point you've gotten. We have to now mark it down, as Chris just said. So be careful.
Which I know Cryodex, there is a box for making note of penalty points. And I believe Tabletop TO, if it's not in there already, I know they were working on that to get that in there. So tournament software is working on making sure that those are easy to keep track of for judges, which is awesome. I mean, I guess I'm patting myself on the back for that. I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Well, it's still, I mean, players should remember. I mean, you can only get 5, so they should remember their own. But yes, judges definitely need to be aware of these players. So when I'm not a judge, but you at least use it for a little bit of bias, I assume, if you're like, well, this player's got 3 points already, and it's another call I had to make about him. It's just the way that whether that's, that situation may not be good or bad or whatever, but I played this game for years without any type of system like this, any of these penalty points. So to finally have them, I'm excited about. I'm not excited about getting them, but I did try to get one by just screaming incorrect Star Wars quotes.
Just very much a penalty point.
I was trying. The judge thought it was funny, but I was, to be fair, it was the last game of Swiss, and I only had one ship left, and I was clearly not making the cut. So, just trying to have some fun. You know me, just trying to have a little bit of fun.
Mhm.
All right, so we're gonna skip then. That was penalty points. We're gonna skip then. As you put, a match is a game, blah blah blah, and best of 3, yada yada. So we're just gonna skip that. The disqualification we kind of touched on a little bit. So if you have 5 or more points, or 7 or more points in a more casual event, and it looks like this says, big note here: only the head judge and the tournament organizer have the authority to disqualify a player from an event. That seems to make sense to me, especially in the larger events when you have a team of judges. This is for judges. This is all pretty standard stuff, but for anybody not familiar with, it says about recording as well. So let's see. I lost where we were now. About
Bottom of page 6, gameplay disruptions.
Yeah.
Yep, right where you're at. And this is one that I am excited to hit on,
All right.
because some people, I think, are messing this up.
Yeah, a little bit.
So I'll go ahead and take this if you want me to.
Yeah. Yep.
So this is a whole big section about, it's got stuff in there from cheating and unsportsmanlike conduct, and other things like gameplay disruptions, things that disrupt the gameplay. It's self-explanatory. But at the beginning of this section, they discuss what to do when something gets all out of whack. And this is something where I think a lot of people are putting too much weight onto one portion rather than others. So let me get into this. So they discuss 3 main resolution types of how to handle if something gets screwed up. Either you just play on, meaning there was a mistake, nobody really gained an advantage, whatever, let's move on. Or if the game has continued way too far and going back is not an option. So that's one thing. Just play on. Then there's resolve now. If there's something that between when something happened and now, like nothing was really affected. You can just apply the thing that was supposed to happen, and you're fine. Just do it now. Move on. I think that is where 90% of your stuff falls in. And then there's rewind. It's like something happened and decisions have been made since then, and this needs to be dealt with. Let's rewind to that. And the one that's come up frequently is
attack order.
Yeah, during an attack. Yeah. During the engagement phase, something happened 2 attacks ago. How do we deal with this? I mean, we just saw it over in Euros at the final table, and that was pretty crazy. They forgot to do the splash damage for a concussion missile, so the shuttle went and flipped something, and it was structural damage. So he should have rolled 1 fewer defense die on a subsequent attack. But then it was argued, that there was stuff in between there that really didn't matter. The shuttle shot at something, and so it was got the structural damage, and then the shuttle did an attack, and then something attacked the shuttle. So they rewound all the way to the point where the shuttle got the card, and then the shuttle redid its attack, which it actually got more damage through than the first time it did, which was completely irrelevant to the fact that there was structural damage involved. I mean, that didn't matter at all right there. And then the next attack, which the original time they did it, the guy rolled his attack dice and got blanks. So defense dice was irrelevant whether 1, 2, 3, or 100 were rolled. So you could argue that one wasn't affected either, but that thing did have an effect on the attack. So redoing it, okay, I can see the argument there, though I don't really agree with it. But that middle attack should have never been touched, because there was nothing that had to do with it, and at least that's my opinion.
Sure.
What do you guys think?
And that makes sense to me that you only you only need to rewind the things that would have changed. But I will say though, and the devil's advocate of that, that there is some things where, well, I wouldn't have attacked him, so that attack is all weird, right?
Right.
So you
Yeah,
either
and if there is
I
that
see the hard
situation,
line. I
yeah.
see a hard line of rewind it all or don't rewind it all. I don't know. What about you,
Right,
Zach?
or like for instance, in that specific example, maybe in that middle attack, he spent a focus or didn't spend a focus because he thought he was going to have enough defense dice in the attack that was coming at him. Oh, maybe I'll save it for defense, but oh man, I have structural damage. I'm only going to have 1 or 0 defense dice. Screw it, I'll spend my focus there. So that is a decision point that could have happened. I don't recall if that was involved in that one. So perhaps that did have an effect.
I think that's really where it is that's how many decision points are there from the point that the mistake was made till when it's caught. Like, to go off something different, like let's say you forgot to put a stress token down. In most cases, you cut it at the end of the turn. It's like, oh, I did a red maneuver, I should be stressed. You put it down then. But what if you're in the situation where you're playing against like Scum Han, who gets the extra attack die when he's attacking somebody stressed? How far do we need to roll it back now at this point? Is it something that actually affected the game? Then yeah, we need to roll it back. But if it's just, oh hey, we forgot a token, then just put the token down now and we keep going. It's not affect. It didn't affect the past. It shouldn't affect the future. You just fix it now, so it's rolling into it.
Right, and I had that happen at the top 4 at Muncie. There was somebody who's like, "Oh man, we completely forgot to shoot with this," and I was like, "Well, did he get shot at by anything? Is the thing he's shooting at, did it get shot by anything else or have a shot or anything?" And they're like, "Nope, it was just that shot. Whether it happened then or now, irrelevant. Do the shot now. Done."
Yeah,
like easy peasy.
So it almost seems like they worded it in this document in the order of what you should try to accomplish. You should try to just play on. If that's impossible, resolve what you can. And if that is impossible, and if nothing else will work, have to do the rewinds then.
Yeah, and then there's also the argument that rewinding is impossible. If you've just had way too many things happen, then you loop back to just, good Lord, play on, and some of y'all get penalty points.
Yeah.
That where would be, and sorry, Zach, to cut you off, but I was gonna ask you guys where now taking this information with the penalty points, at what point should judges be applying penalty points to these situations?
Right. I mean, you get you get 5 penalty points in a tournament. So giving out 1 penalty point isn't really all that of a big deal. It's more just a reminder. Is like, come on, quit screwing things up. Since like you're getting 5. So like if somebody really screws up one of these things and forgets stuff and is like, man, you made me really have to deal with thinking through that and rewinding things. You know what? I'm going to give you a penalty point because you have caused issues for me and your opponent, and we're all just brain burnt just from figuring out this situation. So get your stuff in line. Here's a penalty point.
Yeah, or if it's a situation where clearly somebody did something wrong and it was their responsibility to keep track of it. Like, I know it's both players' responsibilities, right? But if it falls on one person and they take advantage of the situation and they gain something out of it, then they should end up getting the point.
Yeah, thinking of this was the Top Cut game that Dion was streaming at Gen Con. There is a missed die roll, an incorrect die roll. The ship had a tractor beam token on it, but the player rolled the full amount of defense dice. He did it twice because he got shot at twice. And then it wasn't until after that, I believe it was the next planning phase, that they called the judge to ask him which of these play on, resolve, or rewind should we do. And the judge was like, you get a penalty point for rolling too many dice, and you get a penalty point for not remembering that you put the tractor beam token out. Play on. Like, it's too far back. Like, whatever. You
Yeah.
guys are you're done attacking. Like, we're not going back.
Juras, what was that? You, Juras? I see you in the
It
chat.
It was definitely Michael.
It was Juras.
But honestly, though, I kind of really like that ruling of just like, man, you both made mistakes there. Like, have some points and try to remember next time.
Yep. I think that's fair.
Just trying to keep the game moving, honestly. Like, I think probably one of the most annoying things is if a judge is over there long enough to the point that they need to give you an extension. That should probably be a point. Just like, you guys
Really?
no, it's
Yeah.
like,
That makes sense, though.
do you guys remember Gen Con 2016? Where there was like a 3-hour break between round 1 and round 3? Or round 1 and round 2?
Why? Why was there such a long break?
Tournament software crashing
Oh,
multiple
sure.
times.
Sounds
and
about
stuff.
right.
But like, if you are holding up everything, then you're affecting the people around you, and that is enough to fall into a tournament point.
So Tome should get 4 penalty points. I'm on board.
It probably gets 5 every tournament. Don't worry about it. But it's all casual, so it stays in. What are you gonna do? But I don't know. I think that's super interesting. I think that I personally hate rewinding. Like what you said. Like, the token's already there. Like, or it was spent or not. Like, unless it's very crucial. I like to just do the resolve now. And if it was last round, we're playing on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What's so? Now here's a question. This goes on. The next part of it is the rest of 2 is missed mandatory abilities, missed game steps, and illegal game states. Applying what we just were talking about, the play on, resolve now, and rewind. What is the best course of action for these things? Missed mandatory abilities. I assume you have to do them. They're mandatory.
Right. So like a ship engaging, and this is one that's been a conversation a good bit. Ships have to engage, so that is a mandatory thing, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's more of 2.3, a missed game step. So missed mandatory abilities.
Yeah, just the mandatory abilities.
Yeah, of course I don't have any examples off my.
Right.
So wedge.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wedge is mandatory.
That's
the
an
easiest one to
incorrect
think of
dice
is, the easiest one is 1.0 tactician, right? They have to gain a stress, or
Captive.
Bosk, new Bosk. If you miss, you have to take a stress to perform a bonus attack.
roll. Oh, Boss Gunner. Yes.
Yeah, Bosk Gunner.
It has
Right,
big
yeah.
bolded must.
Yep.
On it.
Yeah. So it's like you have to do those things, and sometimes people forget their special abilities because it's inconvenient at that moment and they don't want it. So I mean that's where it comes into that intent thing, and like, intent shouldn't matter, but judges have to deal with intent constantly. Like,
Right, and I think we can agree that mandatory abilities would just have to be resolved. There's no play on. Have to be done. Correct.
I mean, unless like you've gotten to that point of like, if Wedge at initiative 6 was like, I was attacking somebody and he rolled all of his dice, he didn't drop one, we missed that mandatory ability, and suddenly we're in the movement phase of the next thing, and they're like, oh man, I forgot Wedge. It's like, oh come on, dude, no, we ain't
Okay,
dealing with
okay.
that.
Well, I'm not
Like-
talking about Wedge. I'm trying to think of how you interact with other players. Yeah, there isn't really a lot of second edition abilities there. Oh, here's a good one. We're in the activation phase, and my Jedi Knight didn't recover his force charge. Can I do that?
Just recover it.
Yeah.
It's easy. Just do it.
Sure. That's a resolve now. Mandatory ability. Moving on. Hasn't been affected anything.
Right. I mean, like somebody could really make a stretch argument of, I wouldn't have set that dial maneuver if I knew he had that much force.
Hmm.
Like I was looking over there and he had 0 force. So clearly I thought that he wasn't going to be able to reposition. So I dialed in this maneuver, and
Well-
people will try to argue, but I think
Okay.
that's a bit of a stretch.
It becomes a lightly grayer area when you look at things like higher force count ships or the it's the resistance guy.
Oh, sure. Or Leia crew.
Yeah.
The one with charges, not the one with whatever's. But yeah,
Force.
if you, yeah, so maybe a better example would be Leia, but then you missed your opportunity to use her, so maybe that's not as big of a deal as we think. So
Right, but I mean, I have seen people who tried to say is like, oh, you forgot to flip your charge over. I guess you don't get it this turn. It's like, no,
Yeah, no.
It's like, come on.
all right. So I think those make sense. The things that like just have to occur in the game but aren't really affecting most decisions makes sense. All right, so now we're getting into the deeper state here, which is missed game steps, which is you having an opportunity to trigger an ability or a ship or whatever, and you didn't. Like shooting, as you referenced before. You're about to say a big thing about missing and activating a ship.
Oh yeah, for engaging,
Right.
ships have to engage, and there's the discussion of ships have to engage, but they don't have to fire. So some people take that as you have the option to not fire, so clearly you missed it. You just engaged, you just forgot to fire. It's like, but I'm in the camp that so like they have to engage, they have to make the decision to fire or not, and if you guys miss that, okay, well let's look at the situation. Does his shot have any effect on stuff that was done subsequent? Can we just do that shot in the moment and wiggle that puzzle piece in and have a full picture? Or do we have to rewind something? Like what piece got messed up? And if we have to, fine, rewind. That thing never happened. Back to this point. Do your attack. Let's move on.
Yes.
And that's like jurors gave penalty points for both players. That it's on both players to maintain that. One guy is causing us to move backwards because he forgot to fire with the ship. The other guy is causing us to move backwards because he also needs to make sure that you're going through steps. And there are some players out there who would like you to purposely forget, to take your shot, and would notice that and not say anything. So,
Of course.
come on, guys.
And I'm of course I'm thinking about this as a player and how I would be interacting with other players in these situations and stuff. And I think that going back to that whole play on, resolve now, or rewind, if you and your opponent if you guys can't agree on one of those three things, call a judge and he'll make that decision then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the judge, it is your job to be the bad guy. If players can figure it out on their own, judges are never needed. But judges are there to make the hard decision when you guys just can't figure it out yourselves. So do it.
There you go. I wish we could. I guess I'll ask this.
I think there's another odd one that comes up every now and then. And that's when time gets called. A lot of people get confused on that. Really, like, if you have finished a round and you're fiddling with your dials in your hand and time gets called, you should be playing another turn.
Mm-hmm.
Because people seem to forget that the planning phase is a step of the game. Like, some people have this in their head that, oh, hey, in order for us to play around, I have to have a dial down. I've heard that more times than I care to remember, but it's stuff like that. You have to remember every single step. You have to remember the end phase. You have to give your opponent a chance to trigger stuff that occurs. You can't just rush through the system phase because you don't want Whisper to decloak.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's one of the, again, as a player, that's one of those things where communicating with your opponent and hopefully being able to work with them so that there isn't these weird occurrences.
So Zach, I'll put you in the hot seat. If there's a situation where time gets called and I'm sitting there setting my dials, and then we all of a sudden look down and we haven't cleaned up our focus and evades, all those tokens that should have been cleaned up. Do we play on or rewind to the last turn, clean up our tokens, and then game's over?
If you've both committed to moving on to the next turn and it doesn't have any effect on that, then you play you do the round.
I agree. Yeah, you can't just leave a focus out there and be like, "Oh man, time was called. We never left the cleanup phase. Go back."
No. Shucks.
Right?
Don't give anybody any ideas.
No. I want you guys to know that idea, but I want your judges to also know that idea so they can look at you, slap your hand, and say no.
It's subtle slow play that's there when you need it.
There you go.
Right.
Well, I think we've dissected that one as much as we can. I think the last one here is illegal game state, which I'm not really sure exactly how this differs from what we were talking about before. I guess it would be, someone performed a red maneuver while stressed, and now they're sitting there with 2 stress tokens.
Yeah.
I guess.
Right.
I'm not sure
Or
any other examples of
wrong
this.
dials.
Oh, sure. I guess. Well, that's yeah.
Or having Dash fly off the board and barrel roll back on because outside of the game board is an obstacle.
Sure.
That's clearly illegal or incorrectly resolving a card ability.
Well, of course. I mean, their examples are an illegal action, or as you said, an incorrectly resolves an ability. So illegal action
just
would be like
completely getting something wrong.
Just coordinate with a ship that doesn't have it.
my X-wing's gonna invade. No big deal. My TIE fighter is gonna reinforce.
Please no.
please don't do that.
Like I've had people who are playing a game and they didn't completely read their cards, or some friend set them up with a list, or they just net decked something the night before and they were like, "Oh, holy cow, I super didn't know I couldn't do that." I mean, like I did it one tournament with the gunboat who like after you slam you can fire, but then you're not allowed to use your target lock. Super didn't read that part, and it was using target locks all day. And nobody stopped me until like the last round. I'm like, neat. I'm just gonna go ahead and DQ myself.
That's fair. I mean, this is. I feel like this is something that you're gonna see more in the casual tier of X-wing, but probably a lot more in card games and things where you may not be fully interacting with your opponent, so you just kind of have like weird things going on the side of your table. But I don't think this is much more complicated than what we talked about in missed mandatory abilities and missed game steps. So, except for, like I said, casual, and at that point it should be a learning experience, like you said with your Star Wings. Let's see. It just continues on. The rest of that is just repeated gameplay disruptions, which you're going to get more points. There you go. It's pretty simple. You can't forget something. Please don't forget that a judge told you something conveniently a turn or a round later. So
yeah. If you get caught for that, you are just getting the book thrown at you.
Yeah, they very.
I told you this last turn. What are you doing? Like, I have to do that with my kids. I shouldn't have to do that with X-Wing players.
Yeah, they very very clearly say at the end of that, it says, regardless of the reason behind it, a repeated infraction should be taken seriously and thus warrants a hard warning at the very least. Which is, if you stop, like, no, you can't. Like, it's 4 points, you might need to get out of here. But normally shouldn't be a problem, as we all can learn together things. So. Let's see. I think we're just gonna kind of more or less skip over a lot of these other things now. Going deeper into the things. This is event disruptions, and I think I'm gonna skip over a bunch of these.
Yeah, because a lot of it's like ethics, like
Yeah.
don't be a jerk.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of that. I mean, they go through tardiness and absences. They're just kind of better defining, because like we've always had that in a tournament where somebody comes up to you and they're like, "Where's my opponent?" It's like, I don't know, give them 5 minutes, come talk to me. They just define that here. Hooray, great.
Yep. It's now in official writing, so judges will know what to do. This
Right,
is a
and
little
so
bit more judgy things than anything else.
Same thing with the next one where it talks about mistakes with a list. Like we've seen that before. And how do you deal with it? Like, oh man, so somebody accidentally forgot to write down their
S foils.
Their S foils. Ugh. Like, so I mean, like they just better define that in all this, and frankly, judges should be trying their best to check that stuff as soon as possible in a tournament. So like in here, you know, before the start of round one, in between rounds, and blah blah blah, all the way down. So like you should be worrying about it as soon as possible. But I mean, like down at Muncie, we had zero internet because like we were in a tin box with no guest Wi-Fi, so nobody was able to check their squad builders, and people were like, I don't know how many points these things are. So we were trying really hard, and we went through and checked every single list over the course of the first round. So you know, we knew where stuff was, but we like, fortunately, I don't think we had any mistakes, which was great.
You had like 1 points mix up.
Yeah.
So you got involved immediately.
Yep. So like, not too bad, but like the sooner you catch these things, the better. So that's kind of on the judges. Like, you shouldn't be suddenly realizing there's a list discrepancy in the cut. That is like, that either means you did not get enough judges on your team to be able to adequately do things, or you just didn't care, and then suddenly you cared at the end, and now it's a significantly bigger deal than it should have been.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, fortunately, a lot of that applies to more like card games, your Destiny, your LCG, your Magic, I guess. This doesn't apply to Magic, but I don't know what other games are cardy. Anyways, oh shoot,
L5R.
Oh, L5R. I was gonna say I said LCG. R.I.P. LCG.
Keyforge.
Oh, Keyforge. There we go. I'm sure
that's probably a hard one. Illegal in that. Or it's really easy. There's no in between.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. That's errors with decks. Here's for players. Here's a simple solution: double check and triple check. Make sure you're correct, and that's one last thing that your judge has to do. Let's see. Going down here, still going through disruptions. Marked cards. This is really only going to apply to your damage decks. So, hopefully this isn't a problem. Most opponents offer a cut, so you can kind of like not look, but like see if your opponent's got some weird things going on. Normally, it's not a problem. Like I said, there's a little bit more for judges just kind of doing things. Like, it's kind of like obvious, like players know that they shouldn't be doing these things.
Yeah, spend all your time trying to get good at the game than trying to cheat your damage deck. Like, that is time well spent elsewhere.
Yeah, there's not damage is bad in this game, so there's really not like a thing that you're gonna do. Not with a legal deck, anyways. I think if you had an illegal damage deck, you might be able to benefit of yourself in cheating.
What if all of my crits were major hull breaches?
You better not be flying impervium plating then.
Oh no.
Just throwing every. Oh, it's another ship card. Oh, it's another ship card. Yeah, my fourth hull breach. Oh, there it goes.
Weird.
No, yeah, just no. It was pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we need to dive too deep into them. Drawing extra cards doesn't apply to X-wing. So moving on, and here we go. Here's the ones that I really want to go over, and it's slow play and the different forms of unsporting conduct. I'm sure we will have a lot to talk about for slow play, but let's see. Where's the best example in here? Basically, it says slow play is an issue that arises when a player takes more time than necessary to perform one or more game actions. It can be a very fine line between slow play, which is unintentional, and stalling, which is a form of cheating. As judges, how do you guys recognize intentional stalling to gain a benefit in the game?
That is,
Well, okay, so intentional stalling.
I
So like slow playing on purpose because you're like there's like 3 minutes left. I need to make this round last so that there's not another round. The times we like most of the time we hear about it is just from somebody because there's a whole bunch of games going on and we can't see them all. So that's really hard to do. So when there's a lot of people like that, best thing you can do is look at your opponent and in the nicest way possible say, hey, can you play more quickly? This is taking a long time, longer than I think it should, and I don't want to call a judge over. So please just pick it up. And usually people being called out like that will pick it up. Try to be nice about it because if somebody isn't intentionally doing it, people can kind of lose their minds. Sorry, Zach. Not you, Zach. Zach Matthews.
Okay.
No, I super triggered Zach Matthews one game by asking him to pick it up, and he was like, "Oh my gosh!" So like just try to be as nice as possible. But if you think they're like super doing it maliciously, call over a judge and be like, "Hey man, you're taking way too long on this. I'm gonna call over a judge to keep an eye on this and ask for some extra time because this is excessive." And a lot of people are confrontation averse. So I mean, maybe kind of nudge your friend next to you and be like, "Hey, go grab a judge." But most of the time we see it is in the cut when we're specifically watching a couple tables.
Sure.
So like I've had that happen, and like I'm watching a game, and like pace is going as it goes. And then all of a sudden I see somebody taking like a long time on a decision. I'm like, whoa, this decision is not that hard. Why is he taking this long? And like I've had some high profile games that I've had to do this where like, and especially at that point, usually like you're running a clock, like off of your phone, like it's not big displayed somewhere. It's like I've had times where I sit there and I pause the clock and I'm like, all right, buddy, you take your time, you make this decision. Clearly it's really racking your brain. I'll start time when you're done. But I mean, like we don't get the opportunity to do that very often because usually there's a whole lot of people and like we can't be watching them all. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely in Swiss, it's a lot easier to protect yourself as a player from it. Like you said, ask people to not take so long. Like some turns of the game are going to take longer than others. Like your initial engagement and the next 2, maybe 3 turns after that. But just because, if you're up on points and suddenly you're taking 3 times the amount of time to set your dials, that's pretty clear as to what somebody's trying to do.
Yeah, I fully agree there. I mean, that's it. I highlighted here in the rules that players should openly communicate this. I mean, I would say for anybody listening, don't raise your hand and call a judge, and your opponent's like, well, what is he doing that for? I'm just trying to make a decision here. Like, please please talk to your opponent and be like, hey man, you got like 1 minute left on that dial, or you got like 30 seconds more before you decide what action you're taking, or else I gotta escalate it. I mean, as I always, try to resolve everything, kind of as your players. But I think that there's something that gets lost in between just playing slow and playing slow for an advantage. If you're, what do I want to say? You gave the example of like the first engagement. Like if your squad's staring down another squad, you're only 5-10 minutes into this game. And you're setting like a lot of dials, right? Or not, excuse me. You're taking some time to set your dials. And your opponent's already got his dials down and he's waiting for you. Like that player is not playing slowly to gain an advantage at that point in the game. They are just a little bit overwhelmed, trying to make an appropriate decision, and that's when you kind of nudge them and be like, come on, man, we're wasting time here. And I would say that definitely the easiest way to be malicious about it is like 5 minutes got called last round, and you're just sitting there spinning your dial, like knowing that you could just kill enough time to make it this be the last round, where you kind of win on points.
I think one of my feelings about some of the metas that existed in 1.0 kind of hit the nail on the head here is like what at the point of that game that I wasn't enjoying is it's the difference between trying to win the game and trying to not lose. Taking your time to pick good maneuvers is trying to win. Taking your time because you're up is trying to not lose. That's kind of the moral difference is really what it is.
Right. I mean, you even kind of see that some with big beefy lists like if somebody has TIE Swarm or Rebel Beef or something like that, they know on that first initial joust, like they're probably going to get some points and like heavily hit something, and then as the game goes longer, they start losing pieces and start bleeding points. So they want as few rounds past that initial engagement to happen as possible. So, some people get really good at just taking their time and, making sure that they don't even get to that point, instead of, I'm going to fly in here super quick, kill something, and then all of a sudden slow down. So sometimes slow play starts from like the very beginning. And you can burn an insane amount of time of like they showed on their like showing up to your table late is mentioned in there, but they give you 5 minutes. There are people who may show up to their table intentionally 5 minutes late, take their time setting up, pull out their whole big TIE Swarm, and by the time you get to your first round, you're like half hour into the game, you're like, what the heck just happened? It's like, where'd this whole game go? There's no way I'm going to be able to take down enough of this list in this amount of time, and then it's completely appropriate for you to call over the judge and be like, hey, like, look at this, look at the time, look at this, like, please give us a little bit, like, and hopefully your judge is reasonable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully everyone is playing. I really like that quote, Zach. Playing to win instead of playing not to lose. I played a lot of first edition points fortressing Miranda. That was that was how I could win games. To be honest with you,
Corran Horn was totally different.
I'm sure he was, because he had to do green maneuvers to heal.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's much different than shooting, but. Regardless, like I've been on that side of the coin. I'm obviously we're out of first edition, so everybody can leave those mistakes behind and come into second edition now. But I really like the idea of like, man, if you're taking a moment to figure out how you can boost and barrel to get a shot, Like you can take a couple seconds at that. Like you're fine. You're trying to play the game, which is um, not stalling, which is I think the big takeaway here. Because if you're, I don't really have any more examples to this, but I don't know. Any other thoughts on slow play, stalling versus taking an slow play? All right, moving on
I
then.
mean,
Let's do
unless
it.
we want to get into the whole fortress thing discussion, but I think that's in a very different place, and maybe if we have time later.
That's uh, I don't know. That's hard to say. Because, I mean, if you're killing time to gain an advantage, I heard that's slow playing. So, it's up to the judge at that point.
Okay, well, if you want to put it like, okay, we've crossed this line now.
Okay. Brought it up.
If you want to define it as killing time to gain an advantage because there's a clock,
Yes.
that statement has not defined whether you're doing it at the beginning of the game or the end of the game.
No.
So if I take my Soontir Fell and I 5 straight and boost to get away from you, and I know you can't catch me, I'm stalling, aren't I? And I challenge you to find anyone who will agree with that statement, even though,
Well,
like,
if you're not
as a player,
engaging-
I despise running at the end of time.
Mhm.
But it's a valid strategy, and I've used it. I hate myself for it, but it's a valid strategy.
I would
But-
say not engaging is not trying to win. You're just
But
trying not
there
to
are
lose.
moments in the game where you disengage because
Oh, sure.
you got to get out of a bad situation and come back in.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people want to throw all of that stalling discussion at the beginning of the game where they're not engaging at the beginning. And frankly, I think it takes more guts to stall at the beginning of a game when you don't know what's about to happen.
You don't know
than
if
it
you're
takes.
winning yet.
Yeah, than it takes at the end of the game where you're like, I'm up by 67 points, and my value of Soontir here is plenty, and he's over on the other side of the board. I'm going to fly him into that corner. He's just going to hang out, and they're never going to get to me because they ain't going to realize it in time to get over there. I just won. And it's like,
I mean,
that frustrates me.
well.
But like, I get it. Like, but if you're gonna have a discussion about one, you kind of got to have a discussion about the other. And personally, I think the fortressing rules are there. They are well defined. I agree with people who kind of push the line a little bit and say, if you have one ship that's sitting there spinning in a circle, we need to talk. But the whole thing of if two people are going up and down the side of the board trying to jockey for position and find that right moment, I ain't gonna call somebody on that. You're playing the game. I'm gonna leave you be. I had a game at Adepticon that we only fired twice. Like every game around us was over before we had our first shots, and we were flying and jockeying through asteroids trying to get that perfect moment. And it was an intense game we had. Like, and frankly, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Oh, sure. Well, let me ask you about the fortressing. Obviously, we've seen like Starbipers doing little butterflies, the Phantoms decloaking, hanging out in a corner, or running away from the enemy, doing whatever. What's your thought on grappling struts?
I think that they are there as a mechanic, and that's not you are putting yourself in a position where someone can shoot you. So that's not really fortressing.
I'm not running away from you. You're more than welcome to come over here.
Like, there is the possibility of you moving. Like, that sounds half-hearted.
I mean, there's a possibility for everything.
Yeah, like, the ship is there, and you can actually shoot at it without having to put yourself at a huge disadvantage. Whereas castling in the corner, fortressing in the corner, or just doing one hards in the corner is basically saying you have to come here and you have no exit strategy other than flying off the board or turning away from me. Whereas those guys, you can just they're in the middle of the board. There's plenty of room around them.
Yeah, the vultures have to be at least range 3 from an obstacle, or range 3 from the edge of the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing I've heard is if your entire strategy is you come all the way over here or we're going to time, then you might be having a problem.
Yeah.
I like that they're like that doesn't, define it extremely well, but I think that gives a decent guideline for you to start thinking about, is what I'm doing okay? So like that whole landing strut thing is like you can't have your entire swarm sitting on one rock. So the rest of them got to be doing something. So I mean, there's some play somewhere in there to be done. But if you take 2 or 3 vultures and throw them onto different rocks and be like, you know what, I'm gonna have this area over here is now my zone. I have taken over this zone. Come at me, bro.
We're playing tower defense now, boys.
Right. So it's interesting because it's almost like them fortressing is their tactic, but it's a very different than I'm a chill in my corner and I'm never gonna come out. Is like I've never liked that as like a full like this is my strategy for every list. Sit in a corner, never moving.
Well, wrapping that, taking the idea of slow play, putting it into what we're talking about with floor rules here, the rules of slow play put it into the category of cheating. That would be beyond the regular what we had just discussed about disruptions. Now, obviously, it says here that normally a judge saying you might be slow playing, please don't do that, would be enough. So no points awarded. But it does say that would continue with the normal warning, and then obviously repeated offenses increase that. I believe this would be probably a personal thing amongst judges. At what point do you give a penalty point for slow playing? Let me phrase this, or let me add a second point to that, or a second question. Would you ever give somebody a point before you just verbally ask them?
I mean, if you were actively watching the game already, then I would say it's a reasonable thing to award a point for. But you can't just walk up and be like, "Hey, you're slow playing here. Have a tournament point."
Well, and like you said, I don't know if I heard you right, but I think you said, would you give a penalty point without saying anything?
Yeah, without
right?
What Zach just referenced, which
All
is
right,
like
okay.
you'd always talk to the player first about what
Right.
he's doing.
Yeah, like I mean, worst case scenario, I'm watching a game and somebody's going really slow, and you walk in and say, "Hey, you're going way slow. You need to pick it up." Like, and that's the moment where you decide to follow that up with, "And I'm giving you a penalty point. Keep it up for the rest of the day," or you say, "Pick up pace, or I'm going to give you a penalty point for this game."
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where you can decide, and like depending upon what you saw, what you perceived, that kind of thing. So sometimes even going up to a table, especially if like a spectator calls you over, walking up to a table and just looking at both players and saying, "Hey, I heard somebody's playing slow here. I'm gonna watch for a little bit. You guys make sure you keep it up." It is enough for people to go, "Oh God, I better keep going." So
Okay. That makes total sense to me.
like it's one of those very situational things.
Sure. I think that was the point I was trying to get across is that judges aren't just handing out things. They're like, oh, it's been a minute since you did something. Here's a point, or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's very situational, and it has a lot of judge involvement before um, anything outside of a normal warning would be given. It sounds like, because they do say that repeated offenders give out multiple warnings and game losses, or even, as we mentioned, on the intentional stalling, then would be a form of cheating. But let's press on. I think we've divulged as much as we can. I don't think I've said that right, but whatever. We're going to move on to the last category, which is pretty broad, has a lot of topics. It's unsporting conduct. This is, let's see, they go over, let me go up to the context for a second. I'm going to do a quick overview. They do in unsporting conduct. These are event disruptions, different things that would give you points or such. There's major or minor, major, bribery and collusion, stalling, aggressive behavior, vandalism and theft, and cheating. I don't think we need to explain a lot of these. Is just don't be a jerk. But there's a couple that are pretty interesting to discuss. And I think I'll say that minors are what we were talking about, like using profane language against your opponent. Obviously, that's bad. Don't do that. Major is like harassment in many forms, making someone feel uncomfortable, unsafe, or unwelcome. Please don't do that. Those are pretty standard things, right? What I want to talk about is it may or may not be, depending on your circle of X-Wing players, collusion may or may not be a big deal in your local meta. I don't think it normally is, but it is something that we've seen in X-Wing before, and I just kind of want to touch on it a little bit. Obviously, collusions when two players discuss an outcome of the game and try to artificially determine the results of the game based on that discussion. And let me ask you right away, we're all familiar with Final Salvo as a way to determine games. If as a judge, if we called you over and we said me and my opponent have decided to Final Salvo to determine the game, what would be your response?
It's not allowed. You have to play the game. But one of you is allowed to concede at any moment if you want to.
Pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's what I did to you guys at Adepticon. It super wasn't fun to sit there the whole time, and like you guys tried to play it out, but that's the way the rules are.
Yep.
You got to play the game. And
it does.
And like we saw it at Worlds following that up, where Travis Johnson and Jerry were sitting there and going, I ain't gonna engage with you. He's not gonna engage with me. Can we just Final Salvo it? And I was like, no, you can't. And they're like, okay, so we're just gonna sit here and do nothing. And I was like, okay, you do that, but I'm gonna let the marshal know. And that's when Alex went over and told him, you guys have to play the game, and if you guys do not go through the motions and play the game, I'm gonna disqualify you. And that's when they decided, okay, we're just going to flip our dials for 75 minutes running into each other. And that, you're welcome, is where the Fortress rules came from. That specific event. Holy crap. So, yeah. that was an interesting situation. But, yeah, you got to play the game. And if you don't like the list you're up against and you just want a Final Salvo, I mean, sorry you both brought things that weren't fun, but play the game.
Think about it more next time.
Yeah, Zach, you got anything else to add about collusion? It is a serious thing because you can get disqualified automatically for it if you're caught on the wrong
Hmm.
end of it.
I think there are some people that try to look at some situations and say that this is definitely collusion when things just aren't. Like you are free to concede a match at any time for whatever reason you want. You need to go catch a flight, you need to, go eat lunch, you need to do whatever, you can concede. You just can't like talk to your opponent about it. You also can't just go up and ask your opponent to concede either.
It
Like
might work.
I mean that's technically collusion because
It is.
you are propositioning them to concede and alter the effects. But if you go up and make the decision, say, "Hey, I concede," there's no one has any say in your actions. It's just if you get the other person involved, then it's worse.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
agree with that fully. I mean, if and this is, I'm trying to think of. So we recently went through this last season a lot of worlds tickets. That was the big thing this season. Everyone's trying to get their worlds ticket, but there was a lot of situations to where someone would have a worlds ticket and they would be playing against somebody. Maybe it was the last round of a hyperspace qualifier. Maybe it was like top 16 at an open, to where the winner of the game would get the invite. They're conceding then and just allowing your opponent to get the invite was not collusion. It wouldn't be, as long as like what we said, is that you just conceded without them being involved in that decision. Um, so I've seen it a lot. That kind of I think it's called also scooping. I'm just like allowing somebody else to continue on in the tournament. As I think the defining factor there, like I said, we keep hitting it again, is that it's when you discuss it. As long as it's just you making that decision and you're not with your opponent in any way, totally fine.
Mhm.
all right, and frankly, like the way they put it in here is convincing or manipulating an opponent to concede. You are perfectly allowed to walk up to a table and tell your opponent, "Hello, opponent. I am not conceding this game. Are you conceding this game? No, let's play." And if they say yes, they conceded. And that's that's allowed. What you can't do is, "Hey, you gonna concede this game? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, have
Holy
you
shit! I
looked
left
at the scores
$5
lately?"
here.
I mean, I'm gonna admit to the whole reason I brought that up is I was asking people too, um, hey, do you got a Worlds ticket? Because I don't have mine. Do you plan on going to Worlds? Because I would like to. Just saying. It never works. To be honest with you, everybody is trying to beat you, regardless, regardless of the situation or any prizes or anything.
Right, and I mean, there are people who have taken this pretty far, and stated that uh, that you like if you walk up to a table and say, "Hey, how's it going, man?" and they said, last round was pretty rough. I took a loss." It's like, "Oh, that's unfortunate." So some people are saying, "Oh, the suddenly uh like some sort of information was devolved between the players. No one's allowed to concede because there's collusion."
Social pressures.
Right. Well,
Mm,
like
mm.
that that's a debate, but in I I really don't think like idle chit chat is grounds of collusion.
Oh yeah.
Though I mean I can see that argument if you really stretched it, but if you somehow like realize that your opponent you know like was in a certain situation and you were in a certain situation, you know, if if you want to concede, as long as there wasn't discussion about about conceding, then it was your decision. You came up with it. You're fine.
You're an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Hopefully, we won't have any more controversy on collusion, as it's now well defined. Hopefully well defined.
Well, I mean, like every time you get something like this, people are going to push those gray areas, and collusion's one of those where people are kind of having a tough time with it. Like they're taking that situation of they almost feel like you should walk up to a table and, like, if you're going to concede, you should say it, like those should be the first words out of your mouth. That's it. Like, and even like people take it so far, and like I know there's people who are like, they're driving to a tournament with their buddies, and they say way ahead of time, it's like, man, if we get paired against each other, we just need to know how each other are doing, and like let's just agree whoever's doing worse concedes. That's way in advanced collusion, but guess what? It happens. Like, I guarantee it.
Yeah, I mean, I can
People have
definitely,
those. Yeah.
I can definitely see that. And then we were talking. You brought up like social pressures and things, and kind of mixed in what I was talking about of like a really hard place to be is in these last chance qualifiers. Now, if you don't remember, last chance qualifiers, they're side events, 2 opens that you need to go undefeated to get a Worlds invite. Now, in the off chance that, actually, it's more likely than not, I guess 50-50. But anyways, the chance that, Chris, you are 5-0, doing great in the last chance I said the wrong name.
Hyperspace qualifier.
Hyperspace qualifier.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're 5-0 in the qualifier, doing great. I am 4-1 in the qualifier, and you get paired down because you're the 5th 5-0 or 3rd or whatever, and you get paired with me, who now I can't win, or I can't get my invite, and you have a chance to. At that point in time, it is very much okay for me to be like, I'm going to concede the moment before I beat you, so that you get the invite and I get the satisfaction of winning. It is not okay for you to to badger your opponent the whole game about why are we playing this? You can't get the invite. Why are you stopping me from getting the invite?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I completely agree. Or even like if you come to the table and you're like, I know I'm undefeated. I'm pretty sure I saw you lose your last game. And it's like, hey, how you doing? Are you conceding this game? Wink. Like, I mean, you can't do that. Your opponent has to make that decision on their own. Hopefully they're a super nice guy, and they go for it. But I mean, like I have heard of people, saying to their opponent, it's like, hey, I'm undefeated. I'll just give you these prizes, and just do your concede, and I'll give you this, whatever I'm getting. And that is the super big part where they're trying to avoid things like that.
Here's
Go ahead.
the real question for you, because what's your guys' stance on like, let's say you're about to play, you're both 4-1, and you're playing to get into the cut. What is your opinion on saying to your opponent before you even start the game, it's like, hey, do you want to just split the prizes? Doesn't matter who wins. Like, hey, there's 8 dice. You take 2, I take 2. That way, pressure's off.
Yeah, I did that with Mark Moriarty. As long as whatever you're doing doesn't hinge on who wins, I see no problem with it. Yeah, we sat down at the table and we both said, it's like, man, I just really want those dice, and we're at a situation of whoever wins gets it. And he was like, well, I only really want 2 of them. It's like, do you just want to split the dice? And I'm like, hell yeah, let's whoever wins is going to give the other person 2 dice. So hooray, we got to have like the most fun match of the tournament at the most like tense moment of the tournament, and it was a blast. So, and like I see absolutely no problem with like it's not, you know, hey, I'll give you this if you win, or you know things like that, or if you throw this game, I'll give you, you know, half this prize. No, it's you guys deciding, like, irrelevant of anything that happens. You know, if I win, I'm just going to give you some of those dice because, you know, we're being nice guys. No, there's no problem with that.
No, I think that goes back to that it's not dictating the outcome of the game, just what would happen after the game. And as long as
Right.
it's not directly involving the score or winner of the game, it doesn't matter. So I would say no.
Right, but if you twisted it slightly and somebody came up and said, "I only care about getting some of the dice," and then if Mark would have said to me, "Yeah, but I really want to make the cut. I'll give you, you know, two of those dice if you lose," and you purposely lose so I can make the cut. Now it's a big deal.
Now you're having a discussion about the game then, and not the
Yes.
prizes,
Exactly.
which is that's a bad no.
Mhm.
Don't do that. Does that answer that, Zach?
Oh yeah, I think so.
I think we may or may not have gone off on a tangent with that.
That's fine.
Well, yeah. All right. Well, let's keep it moving. I think that blanket statement inclusion's bad. Conceding's fine. Pretty much that. What else we got here? I think we can skip over vandalism and theft and aggressive behavior. Please don't do that. I think we already talked about stalling quite a bit in slow play,
Mhm.
which is what we defined as not unintentional slow playing, but purposely slow playing. That's they say it's a big time no, which makes a lot of sense. And so here's what we end on. It's not the best note to end on either, but I guess we'll do it. The last one's blanket cheating and disqualification. Now this isn't obviously, we said before, it has to be a head judge. Obviously this is going to be something pretty significant. And it says, just they define it as a player attempts to gain advantage in a tournament by intentionally breaking a rule, lying to tournament leaders, intentionally altering results, or somehow abusing any other part of the system for their own benefit. They're guilty of cheating. Now, I think we can define how you could cheat in X-Wing, and I could tell you all the ways to cheat in X-Wing.
He's done them all. No.
No, you. Yeah. No, I wouldn't say I've done them all, but I've seen them. I've seen most of them done, and I know how to cheat, which prevents me from cheating. It's a very complicated topic.
and makes it so that you, like, knowing the ways you can break the rules allows you to catch somebody when they do.
Exactly.
So, like, yeah, it's good to have the knowledge of this. I mean, I went over it on OCX one day. I went over like a dozen different ways you can cheat with just the damage deck. It was like a fun topic, but you know, hopefully it triggered some people to go, you know what? When my opponent offers me the cut, I'm gonna pay attention a little bit more, because, you know, if their damage deck looks fishy, you know, maybe I'll have it checked out. But you know, I would say most of the people at a tournament are not going to be doing stuff like this. But you got to keep an eye out, because there's somebody out there who's taking things way too seriously, and instead of just being good at the game, they're gonna, you know, artificially try to get that edge. And, you know, so some of the stuff on here is like intentionally breaking, and they put the word intentionally in there because people make mistakes. You know, like, deal with it, and, you know, handle that appropriately. But if you're sitting there and intentionally breaking rules, or they say lying to tournament leaders, I don't know if I've seen that, but misreporting match results. I mean, there's a reason I added in just recently that Cryodex can double check to see if your score is even possible, because some people round wrong, like whether they did it on purpose or not, or just do adding wrong, whether on purpose or not. Yeah.
Round up.
Yes, it's round up. Get it right, people. But like in Muncie, we had some people came and submitted a list, and I ran my algorithm against it, and their score wasn't possible. So I handed it back to him and I said, "Go double check this," and it turned out the wrong person won. Now that was completely not intentional, and when the guy realized it, he went over to his opponent and was like, "Dude, you won!" and high fived him. They were having a blast over changing the winner. But I mean, like sometimes you look at those situations and like really close games, and you're like, man, like that person's super added wrong, and they shouldn't have won that game. Ooh, did they do that on purpose or not? And that gets real weird. So,
yeah, I think a big part of this kind of like blanket cheating is the whole intent part of it. Were you trying to be unintentional versus malicious? Of whether you are actually trying to do this. We brought up. I go to activate one of my ships. We're both flying rebels, and I lift up your dial instead of mine. I clearly saw it, right? But it's in that it should be easy to interpret intent that I was reaching for my own dial, just happened to look at yours accidentally. But the opponent drops a token on the floor, and his opponent reaches over and flips up his dial real quick. That would obviously be malicious.
right.
I think as long as you're trying not to be malicious, I wouldn't worry too much about being disqualified for things like this.
Right. I had at Worlds one time, like I got called over by a player who said, "I accidentally looked at my opponent's dial. What do you need to do? Am I disqualified?" And he was ready to have the book thrown at him.
Oh, man.
This is my moment. I completely screwed up, and I was like, "Look, let me grab the marshal. You're not going to be disqualified, but this round is not going to be good for you." And we applied some pretty awful things to that round for him, but we think it was fair. Basically, your opponent's going to set your dial, and you're only going to focus, kind of thing. Super bad. But I mean, I can't give you any decision points because you now know his best option because he picked it.
Well, yeah, especially. Well, was he still setting his dials?
Yeah.
Oh, well then, yeah.
Exactly.
The book's coming out on that.
Yeah.
That's unable to move on, rewind, or whatever the other one was.
Play on.
Play on. Yeah, hard to play on.
Yeah.
But when you have information like that. Zach, what do you think? Are most people cheating? Have you ever actually seen anybody disqualified in a tournament for cheating?
Those are two different questions.
Okay.
I don't think most people are cheating. I've never seen somebody get disqualified for cheating, but I have seen people cheating. So, I mean, it happens, but it's rare, right? It shouldn't happen much, And really, it's more of a talk to the person. Don't go blast them on the internet if you can avoid it.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
and I think most of the time I've seen cheating, it's been like really subtle, and people almost they almost feel like they're bending the rules like so far before they break. But I've definitely seen where people are like, we've all had this happen. You're shaking dice around in your hand and one of them falls out. Now, there are people that when that one falls out, they wait, see what the result is, and then quickly roll the rest. It's like, oh man, that was a crit. Yes. And that's a moment where I've looked at my opponent and been like, no. It's like, we're not dealing with that. That fell out of your hand. Just
Oh yeah.
re-roll them, because if that was a blank, they'd have been oops. It's like, no, it's
Yeah.
like, let's like I get it. You're just bending rules like crazy. Technically, you drop the die as a roll.
I just chase my hands after it every time. It's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, as soon as I feel it falling out, I just yell nope, and that's just me defining as like, this roll doesn't count unless I roll them all. So I mean, like there's things like that, and I think that's like subtle cheating. But if you looked at somebody and said you're cheating, they're instantly going to be like, oh, I didn't feel like I was super cheating. I was just bending the rule like crazy, and it kind of broke. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely people who are out there that oh, I didn't have any shields left on my ship, but you looked away to say something to your buddy. I'm gonna put a shield back. Those things have happened, and it's not good.
Yeah.
Well, at least, like I said, by knowing some of this information, knowing what is possible, is a way to detect it. I think we can all agree that cheating's not running rampant. People aren't constantly trying to break the rules or whatever. Most people are trying to play the game, trying to have a good time. It's just part of the rules, so we gotta make sure that we cover it. Here's an easy thing. Don't cheat. That will save you from being disqualified. And I think that pretty much wraps up. Well, what else is left here?
They just list that big appendix of putting it all in a nice table format. That's so nice.
I was gonna say, we already went over all this. But yeah, so this is a nice grid that people can. This is more of a reference, I think, probably for judges at that point. We're like, oh, it was tardiness. That's a normal warning. Boom. So not really anything new there.
Super
Overall,
handy.
though, so after discussing it, I personally, I've heard it echoed many times. We needed floor rules. I'm personally satisfied with them. I think they work if they're implemented correctly. Should be great. I think I've already improved tournaments since it's come out. What is your guys' final thoughts on penalty points and the floor rules?
I think it's a good idea. I'm excited to see how they expand it for the game specifically. But it's a good start.
Yeah, exactly that. I think that this is a good, just a good foundation to build off of. And as soon as they get some more specifics, the better it'll be. What do you do when this happens? Examples are always good.
Yeah, there's definitely room for improvement. And if we do get some examples, I think that's probably the best way to continue it and improve it. Obviously, it's not going to be something static. They're going to update it at certain points in time. So overall, pretty awesome that we have it now. Everyone hopefully should be thankful for it. We got a little bit of time left. While I have you guys, I do want to ask you a couple rules questions, getting away from penalty points and floor rules, and actually get down. No.
Oh no!
He said no. Oh, he said. I thought you were just like no. They're really simple ones, and maybe you guys have some off the top of your head they can throw out. Of like frequently asked questions. I know we have a FAQ and rules reference, but sometimes it doesn't cover as many cases as we'd like it to. There's an easy one. I already talked to you guys about it, but for the public, we had a question about Padme's ability, saying they can only modify one focus result. If you add a focus result, can you modify them? Or excuse me, I'll make sure that I say that you already have a focus result, and now you add a second one. can you modify both of them?
So I thought of a good way to explain this to people the other day when it came up in one of my chats. Um, there are two different things going on when you are attacking. You are rolling dice. Now, once you have rolled dice, you no longer have dice. You have results on the table.
Mhm.
What you choose to do with those, whether those are basically like discard them and roll more dice, that's what re-rolling is, or adding results. You can always add results, but those results cannot be modified, is what it's saying. So you can add a focus, but let's say you have a pool of 3 focuses now. You can only modify one of them.
Right. But if you had 0 focuses and you added one, that one can still be changed.
Yep.
All right, that makes sense to me. Uh, it's a way to both that to get around it and kind of working against it as well. So pretty interesting. The other one, just pulling these off our Gold Squadron Discord. You can ask us questions, submit lists of the week, and things like that. And recent one was, how do fuses interact with mines? So fuses prevent a mine from detonating. So it would come down to what, when the mine would detonate for the first time.
Yeah, just that. It would be, you place it, and if you place it on top of a ship, you remove the fuse. I think the more difficult question, which I'm not sure if there is a clear answer or not, is when you have to declare whether or not you're going to be triggering the fuses. Because there
Well,
could be a situation where it's like, oh, I think I'm going to hit Soontir, but I know I'm going to hit my bomber. Are you
mm,
are you allowed to? When do you decide? Do you decide after it goes on the table, before?
well, let's read the card. Actually, wait, do I have the fancy technology? I guess I do, but it'd be easier not to.
Hmm.
It'd be easier not to do it. Let's read the card together. Maybe we can find out. I agree that it's to be fair, Zach, I assume that you know that it's questionable. Uh,
I
but
haven't looked at it since it came up.
well, it
But
says
I've been,
after you drop, launch, or place a bomb or mine, you may place one fuse marker on that device. So assuming that after would mean once it's on the table, right? And you've removed that
yeah.
little one token or whatever, however you launched or dropped or whatever, then you would be able to decide.
Hmm.
So it sounds like in the example you gave, is you would be able to get the token all the way on the mat, see if it's underneath Soontir or not. And if you can get it on the mat, then you can decide to put a fuse on it. But that would, of course, be before measuring anything. It's a little bit easier on proxy mines in that example because you know the proxy mine would hit.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure if there would be any other ways. I think it just I guess it would just be counter nets. We're supposed to be getting cluster mines back too. That'll be interesting.
Sure
Do you,
hope not.
Ugh.
yeah, we are.
So I hope it could just be for scenario play, which I am totally fine with.
Yeah, if they're um, what would you accept a set of cluster mines as one of my obstacles?
Probably. Or if they're only like, as long as they're toned down a lot.
Okay.
I mean, bombs are not a problem in my opinion now. Like
No,
nobody
they're
played
not.
bombs until you could put them on top of someone with no recourse.
Yeah, pretty much. We simply don't have that ability now because everything's. I wouldn't say everything. Most things are system phase.
Yep. Unless you have genius. And let me tell you, genius with the electron proton bomb is just fun. It's not good, but it's sure a lot of fun.
Uh,
So I got
yeah.
one that somebody asked.
Yes. I see the question from Tommy, I think.
Yeah, so it's what happens when somebody doesn't set a dial or swaps a dial with a move not normally on its dial, Beforehand, the opponent would set the dial, but wouldn't a 2 straight be more impartial overall? Yeah, they haven't really defined that one, and I really want that to be in the X-wing specific floor rules, because the way I've been doing it is if you completely forget to set a dial, like sorry, your opponent's going to set it, and it feels super brutal. But don't forget to set your dials. So like having it just be a 2 straight, that could be fine. Like in theory, that could just be fine. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I think that it, like, I think both are reasonable. You know, it's how much do you want to punish the person at fault? But I don't know. Like, I feel like a white 2 straight. I was actually in this exact situation a while back, and I just made my opponent do a white 2 straight. So like, it seemed reasonable. It didn't hurt them or harm them that much, and it kept them stressed. Right? It's there's not a right answer and there's not a wrong answer.
Oh, hopefully there will be a right answer though.
Someday. My opinion on that would be, if your dial, like say if it's a B-wing dial, if your B-wing dial that's on the mat, maybe I'm saying this wrong. It says so you have a B-wing on the mat, but only a B-wing, and for some reason you set your X-wing's dial to it accidentally because your X-wing's already dead. It's off the table. You grab the wrong dial. Put on a hard 3. Well, the B-wing can't even do that maneuver. At that point, I would say 2 straight. We talked about like putting your dial on a different ship. That might be different. I think overall, the blanket 2 forward makes more sense. I'm trying to think of, last Gen Con, there was a crazy situation. And I know it's been a while, but do you guys remember the Force Awakens crit that made you go, or said that you couldn't go straight?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. If
that was the worst crit.
Yeah, they changed that because of a bunch of interactions, including ones where, because they changed it from, well, if you dial in a red while stressed, you had to do it 2 straight. But if you have that crit,
all of a sudden dial in hand.
Yeah, there was a weird situation to where I think it was you, Dutch. Dutch normally watches, so I'm calling him out. But Dutch had set a 5 forward or whatever, a red fast maneuver with his Nim, right? But he also had that crit on him, so he couldn't do the red maneuver, couldn't do the straight maneuver, and he planned on dropping bombs before he revealed his dial as well, and it was a mess. Let me tell you.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I ultimately was able. I set his dial because I had to set his dial at that point. But
yeah,
now that we don't have that crit, it should just be 2 forward. I think that's.
As long as people aren't finding ways to game that punishment, when people find ways to game punishments, really drives me bonkers.
Let me ask you on that. Speaking of gaining that, or gaming it, I would assume you would move your revealed dial to a 2 forward.
Oh,
right, yeah, right. You treat it as if it's a revealed 2 forward.
So
right. No. That's the annoying thing is the wording there isn't for it. Like the stuff with
Kova now.
Oh, with Rick and Kova.
Well, yeah, Rick, Kova.
Rick and Kova. Yeah, because what if I just keep dialing in hard 1 on my Kova?
Right. Yeah. And like the situation always also comes up with like I've seen people with like advanced sensors, and they'll like effectively change their maneuver by advanced censoring a red
Mm-hmm.
uh, action, and then forcing themselves to do it too straight because they revealed a red maneuver. That feels so dumb to me. Like you are gaming a punishment, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I don't like it. Well,
It makes me sad.
all right. So, let's see what else. What other questions we had here? Do. Mm-mm-mm-mm.
I had oh, there was the
Oh, here we go. So, there's a good question from our friend Nick. He's asking for first-time judges, what references would you recommend?
so the rules reference. I mean, all the official documentation clearly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would start there. I personally would recommend the committee, the community rules supplement. That's I'm a little biased because I helped out with it, but I think it's a great group of guys who have spent a lot of time arguing, over a lot of things, and there's a lot of experience in that group. Uh, so I think it's worthwhile paying attention to it and at least reading through it to see what's out there, what our opinions are. Uh, and especially if you're a player going to one of these big events, if one of us is running it, we're probably going to use those answers, so it's worthwhile paying attention to that. Going to there's a couple Facebook groups. Be careful with those because some of them like are just judges yelling and screaming at each other, so be very careful. uh, Otherwise, just find a judge who's been doing it longer than you,
Mhm.
and ask them, is like, hey, I got an event coming up, you mind if I ping some questions off of you on the way to it? It's like, yes, I would gladly. I was like, I'll answer them as I got time and give you my opinions on things. uh like, I have no problem doing that, and I don't think I know any judges who wouldn't be okay with that. It's like, no, just leave me alone. uh like I'd gladly help out some new judge.
Of course. I mean, there is definitely what was on the X-wing forums. There is an official FAQ, I guess. I have a hard time describing what that is even on the forums, but it is officially answered questions. Is that correct?
Yeah. They've worked that into the rules document though too.
Oh, it is in the rules now.
Yeah, as
Good
they come out with new FAQ, they've been slowly moving those over.
Okay, so those were more of like when the first game when the game first came out, or if there's like an emergency update on a rule, that's when they would put it into the forums. But for the most part, they put it into the rules reference, from what it sounds like.
Right, because I don't know what stops them from releasing FAQs faster. Some people have speculated those documents have to be approved by Lucas. So like being able to throw those answers just straight into the forums, I think is super helpful. As long as people know that they're there. There's a lot of people that didn't even know that area existed. So kind of feels bad, but it's a heck of a lot better than nothing. Because we used to have, like, all we had was the occasional time that Frank Brooks would decide to answer an email, and then everybody would lose their minds, like, but Frank said this. It's like, well, I don't have that email, and the judge certainly doesn't have that email. It's like, so
People would like hold on to it like it was some kind of artifact.
right,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
And oh man, pray to the gods that you don't get conflicting emails either.
Oh no.
Oh man, because that happened.
Oh man,
I mean-
I was watching the what they did, the Epic stream the other day, and had to stop myself from logging into Twitch because like Alex just did something just terribly wrong.
I mean, I had a time with when I marshaled that Adepticon, we had the whole big issue with lightweight frame and Palpatine,
Yeah,
and
Mhm.
I was able to talk to both Alex and Frank, and I asked them about that, and both of them gave me different answers. So I was like, neat. I guess I'm back to where I was. So like, I guess I'll just answer this myself and move on. So, and that's just those guys are like they really care more about the casual enjoyment of the game. They're not nearly as hyper competitive as we are, I think. So
Ooh. I mean, no, not to you.
uh,
Here we go. I found it online. I posted the link.
all of a sudden I'm like, there's my there's a post I made. What is that?
Yeah, it's your community rules supplement.
Yeah, so there's
It
there's
is.
that page, as well as we have a Facebook group. I think it's just community rules. Yeah, X-Wing community rules supplement. So that's just me, Brent, Ian, and a group of other guys that we've pulled together. People who have judged things, people who just like arguing rules a lot and
Hi.
finding. Yeah, Zach. Uh,
I like to think of myself as a rules scholar.
that is a very polite way to put it.
What was what was the name of the page or group again on Facebook?
X-Wing Community Rules
Community
Supplement.
Rules Supplement.
Yeah.
There you go. I don't know if I want to show my Facebook, but I can definitely repost the link because it's just unofficial X-Wing rules.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna show my Facebook. I've already decided on that. Where's my Twitch? Oh man, I got way too many tabs open, which is a good sign that this is getting. Oh, now I'm showing.
Twitch.
Oh god, shut it down. Shut it down. Shut it down. We went in Inception there for a bit. Oh, now we got double Chris. What is going on?
Unofficial.
There he is. It's unofficial. Anyways, we're gonna wrap up.
We had to painfully make it aware that it was unofficial because people were really super worried that people were gonna take our document, paper mache it to a giant warhammer, and club their TO with it, screaming "Follow this." I think that's what people were really worried about, and like that clearly did not happen. It's like, this is an unofficial thing, but your judge should be aware of it so that at least they can read it and see all of the stuff that they might get asked, because it's been asked enough that I've had to deal with it.
Somebody thought they should say something about it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, let's close out. Main thing is, I saw Dion. I saw him in the chat.
No,
just a second.
That was Luke.
Ah, that makes more sense. Makes a lot more sense. Anyways.
Hi, Luke.
Speaking of Luke, I wanted to bring up to everybody reminder about all of our X-Wing streams. We probably won't have a stream for tomorrow. Normally it's our league night at the pastimes, but Dion's going to be in getting ready for things in Australia. I'm going to be getting ready for things in DC at Nova, so we won't be streaming there. Luke's, as always, going to be streaming on Thursday, and Friday is when I start on Nova. And I think it gets a little weird from there, but I think Dion starts Friday night, because we're kind of on this 22-hour loop. So the main thing is that Friday is when we're going to start the kind of last leg, if you will, of the world tour. So we're trying to finish strong. Going with that has, like I said, I think we counted as like 22 hours. I think I think Marcel did a count of like it's over, like just this weekend we're doing over 100 hours of X-Wing. So there's plenty more to come. And in addition to watching us on Twitch, obviously twitch.tv/Gold Squadron podcast is where you're going to find all of the streams and everything. If you want our recorded content, you need to go over to our YouTube channel, just Gold Squadron podcast, and that's where you're going to watch all the replays. Dion's starting on Gen Con already. We have the uncut streams of Sacramento, Buenos Aires, and Poland, both the team championships and the European and nationals in their uncut forms right now. By the time you're listening to this in audio form or on YouTube, go check it out. They might have the individual individual matches posted. If you like those YouTube videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe and likes and do all those fancy things. We have a Discord community, which is Gold Squadron podcast as well. And that's where you can connect directly with us. I can get special roles for Twitch subs, interact with other community members, things like that. And lastly, most importantly, if you enjoy all the content we bring you and want to help us continue expanding, 2 world tours, 3 world tours, we're going to try to send Dion to the moon. Let's go Galactic Tour. You could do that. You could support the Galactic Tour by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/Gold Squadron. I want to give you, I said at the beginning of the show, everybody who's been watching lately, supporting, huge shout out to you guys. Thank you to Zach and Chris for coming on, talking to about us. It's kind of been in our, what do I want to say, in the back of our mind ever since it came out in July that we wanted to discuss it. We didn't really have, what I want to say, experience with it, and we're not judges either, so that's, like I said, comes from a different mindset. So I really appreciate you guys coming on, getting some discussion with it. Well, I'm going to give it to you guys. You guys got any shout outs or anything before we go?
My shout out goes out to the group of guys who helped me out with the whole X-Wing community rules thing. As we've been dubbed the rules Illuminati. It's been great fun. So if you see one of those guys, give them a thank you for helping out there. I like to think we're doing something for the good. So hopefully, thanks for having me on.
I can't think of too many people other than just saying hey to all the indie guys. I haven't been around much, but hoping to get back some more. See you guys more often. But yeah, thanks a ton for having us. It's been fun.
Oh, no problem. And you got to keep that mustache, man. Don't shave it. Nah.
I feel like we can get a poll going, and if we can get a not suited to your fella answer that is a yes or no on keeping the mustache, I will strongly consider it.
All right. Well,
Suited to your fella is a no.
If I could figure out a way to do that, I'm going to put it on there. It's going to be the next post on our Gold Squadron Facebook, or whenever I'm at Nova, I'm just going to put a picture of your face up there. We'll do it. We'll be fine.
Or I may pull you over.
What? Oh, pull me over. Meow? What? Anyways, all right. This has gone long enough. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.